Welcome to the Property Couch, where each week you get to listen to two of Australia's leading property experts. Bryce Holdaway, co-host of Location Australia on Foxtel's Lifestyle channel, and Ben Kingsley, chair of Property Investors Council of Australia and the 2014 and 2015 Property Investment Advisors of the Year.
All right, folks, you're on the Property Couch where each week Ben and I bring you the insider's guide to property finance and money management. Hello, mate.
G'day, mate.
How are you?
Oh, look, I love these days. I love these shows.
Do you know what I love about today, Ben? We've asked the people to go to SpeakPipe and give us their questions. They've gone straight to the top of the queue. Straight to the top of the queue.
Because they want a book.
Yep.
The Armchair Guide.
They will get a book.
So they'll get a book.
And these questions, Ben, they're good questions that everyone can learn from in the community, but they're
Great.
Super detailed into what the individual client circumstances or individual listener circumstances are, which is good.
I'm looking forward to listening to them.
Because you haven't heard them.
No, I haven't heard them.
Just to, mate, you're the Property Investment Advisor of the Year,
yeah.
back to back.
Runner up in the year after, but I don't know what happened then.
Mate, did you get your paperwork in late?
I didn't even think you put paperwork in.
Yeah. Mindset Minute today. Remember The Castle? Did you ever watch The Castle?
Of course I watched The Castle,
tell him
mate.
he's dreaming.
Are you kidding me?
It's going straight to the
As
pool room.
seen on TV, mate.
Well, I've got some Mindset Minute wisdom from Dale Kerrigan.
Dale.
You ready for this one?
Right.
Dad reckoned that fishing was 10% brain and 95% muscle, and the rest was just good luck. So I thought that'd be good, but I've also
Everyone who does maths quickly can work that out. It's 105%.
Oh, I'm impressed you got that very quickly. And just to sort of level it out a bit, just on that one. Failure doesn't mean the game is over. It means to try again with experience, Ben.
Yeah.
So that was
learn from it.
Leonard Schlesinger. So there's a couple. Leonard and Dale, bits of wisdom for
I love Dale.
Mindset Minute today.
What do you call this, love? Meatloaf. Oh, don't worry, I've got a few there.
It's going straight to the pool room.
Yeah. Great Australian show.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right, today we have got some very good questions, Ben. So let's, without any further ado.
That's it. As our producer comes in to make sure our mic's working all right.
Yep. That's David is asking us this question.
Okay, what do we got, David?
Here.
Good morning, Ben, Bryce and the Stig. I'm a keen Property Couch listener, and thanks for your time generously sharing all your knowledge. It's much appreciated. Just after a bit of advice for myself specifically, I'm a property investor with 3 properties, 2 in Perth, 1 in Brisbane. I'm a medical specialist with a good income, and I'm looking to go again. I've got 900K pre-approval and looking at either Perth or Melbourne through a buyer's agent. Clearly, the buyer's agents have biases, and the Perth guy thinks Melbourne's a terrible place to invest, and the Melbourne guy thinks Perth's a terrible place to invest. If you had 900K, you wanted to go now, and you are a buy and hold investor that lines up with your ideas around good quality growth asset, what would you do? Thanks very much, and come on the Dockers.
You see what? Now you know why I went that one first, didn't you? Just put the old Dockers in. Thank you for that, David.
David, so straight off the cuff, you're going to get a good buying opportunity in both of those cities.
Yep.
Right. So if you're a long-term investor, you're going to get good buying opportunities. For that sort of price point in Perth, I'd probably want an R40 block and at least a minimum R20 block, so it gives me an opportunity to add value if you want to get your hands dirty. I mean, I'm the classic investor who's always done very little to the properties. I just buy and hold them, and I'm a traditional investor. So I talk about active and passive investing.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, so I'm very much a passive investor. So far in my portfolio, I've just bought those properties, kept them tidy, every now and then painted them, done the right thing by looking after the tenant.
Same.
But that's it. So then it comes into the other conversations. Okay, so David's already been a borderless investor, so he has exposure obviously in Vegas, and also.
Did you say Brisbane or Queensland?
Well, I think he said Brisbane.
Yeah.
Oh, Queensland. I think it was Brisbane. So the question there is, you've already got a couple. So he had 3. So he's already got a couple in WA. So why would I necessarily need more in my local neighbourhood? I mean, the reality is yes, Perth is coming off the bottom. We are starting to see signs of it, but just be mindful, it's not even at equilibrium. Like our data suggests that it's not even at equilibrium, which means that there's not any pressure on property prices growing, generally speaking. Now, of course, your good buyer's agent should be showing you pockets. We do know that there are interstate buyers agents coming into the Perth market at the moment looking for the bottom of the cycle opportunities. David would know how well his other 2 Perth properties have performed, so that'll give him some idea in terms of what that looks like. Melbourne, on the other hand, you only just need to listen to our infrastructure podcast to sort of get an idea of how mega cities grow and the diversity of those bigger cities. So I have always said, in a perfect world, if I'm developing a strategy for a client and a plan for a client of buying 4 or 5 properties, whatever it may look like, I'm very, very eager to have some exposure in the Melbourne and Sydney marketplaces, as opposed to having none and relying on what I would call the second tier cities to do most of my capital growth lifting.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's much I can add to that other than the fact that when you think about, if you remove Australia and you think about international cities, Ben, where the prices seem phenomenal, London, New York, and I think that, as you say, he's got exposure in my hometown of Perth, but doesn't have any exposure in the 2 metropolises.
Hey, when does it become hometown versus non-hometown?
I don't know. I think I'm a bit of an alien.
Is it 20 years or is it?
Well, I don't know. I don't know where I belong.
Well, when you say I'm a local, well, you're happy to call yourself a Perth boy, so I think that's going to stick.
Yeah, well, I'm always a Perth boy, mate. It's, go the Dockers. You heard that.
There we go the Dockers.
But I do feel like it's I do feel like an alien because I don't know, because my kids only know Melbourne, my wife anyway. So, but it's not going to get any cheaper. Well, actually, I'll rewind that.
Yeah.
Medical professional, assume, let's make some assumptions. Cash flows are okay.
Yeah. Well, 900s gives you an indication of cash flows.
But he's not, if he's a medical professional, potential, let's make another assumption, he's time poor.
Yep.
So the idea that you're playing the long game and the cash flows are okay, well then I would want to get some exposure into the Melbourne marketplace.
Yep.
I agree with what you had to say, particularly given he's already got 2 in Perth.
Yep.
But I'm also confident that you, at the same price point, you could uncover some gems in Perth. And if you want to see the cycle, you may be able to ride the cycle in Perth. But if you had to make a call, I'd make a call for Melbourne for 2 reasons. One, doesn't have exposure, and the city is going to get multiple millions more in population, so that's going to put upward pressure. And of course, there's land tax considerations that come from having multiple property. If you've got 3 in one state, you hit the thresholds. So the fact that he has already indicated he's borderless, doesn't have exposure in Melbourne, I would suggest that you buy your next one in Melbourne.
And 900 is an okay. If you took 900 into Sydney, it's hard going. It's probably going to be a unit at best in a good location. If you take 900 into Melbourne, you're going to get a little bit more land to asset ratio.
Yeah. You're still going to get a house. You're not going to get a period house.
No, you're not going to get a period house.
But you're going to get a house. And you are never going to be disappointed. And what they may hear over in Perth is, Melbourne's run its course, Sydney's run its course, but I can assure you on the ground, the types of properties that we're buying, Ben, even I can tell you that the amount of bidders, we had a team meeting this morning with the guys, the amount of bidders is dropping, Ben, but it's still not one bidder or none. There's still 2 or 3.
So instead of having 7 or 8 buyers for any one property, the guys are seeing 5s? 4s.
Absolutely. And even clearance rates, below what they've been flying, say in 2017.
Where they're over 80.
But it doesn't matter because where we're buying, we're buying, where the demographic has the income that can afford to pay more. They're not necessarily worried about any interest rate rises, and they've still got strong demand for where we're buying.
Because it's a challenging one for David, because 900 will get him close to the water in Perth. Probably even water views. Won't get you in the elite suburbs. But will get you into the second tier suburbs in that area. So I hear the pain in the sense that it's a difficult one, and this is what I've always said. Anyone who's, I've mentioned this before, anyone who says I can find you the very best property in Australia for your price point, and they're really trying to convince you of that, run a mile, because they're full of crap. They're salespeople. What you want to be saying is basically 900, I'm going to get you into the zone to try and find where I can get you the best capital growth, if that's your strategy, or if I need a bit of yield coming into that. Because as you mentioned before, that land tax is going to eat into some of that cash flow, and that's only going to continue over time. So diversifying into a big mega city We've got to remember Melbourne and Sydney are in that sort of top 110 cities in the world. So even the bigger cities are still growing quicker than them, but they're right on that cusp of being in the top 100 cities by population globally. So that says to me that there's potential buying opportunities there.
And we've got a client, Ben, who's Perth-based, who's also a medical professional and is doing a similar thing. Actually got principal place of residence, a couple of investment properties, got one in Darwin.
Yeah.
Now considering sort of in this major market over here. So
come into the big smoke.
So I don't think you do wrong on either. But
No.
Given A or B, the blue pill or the red pill, I'd go for.
And you can understand each buyer's agents. They're
Yeah.
trying to win a bit of business.
Yeah.
So they're going to sit there and talk up the pros and cons. But we sit here independently with no skin in the game, and I would be taking that business to Melbourne.
Hey, it's actually a good side note, Ben. When you actually are talking to a buyer's agent, just for the listener, the biases are actually quite strong. It's amazing how you go to a Sydney buyer's agent, they want to buy you in Sydney. You go to a Brisbane buyer's agent, and so arguably we're a Melbourne buyer's agent, but we're Melbourne-based buyer's agent. We help clients buy in multiple markets, so you want them to be a little bit agnostic on where they want to be. But good question. What do you reckon?
Beautiful. Next.
Hey, no Collingwood supporters coming in, just the Freo supporters.
So you screening the Collingwood?
I'll screen them. Yeah, all the
if you're a Collingwood supporter,
I've got reams and reams and reams. If they say go the Pies, that's it. They go into the no-go side.
You're robbing them of a free book when their question gets
mate, they should have thought of that when they were a kid when they decided to go for a rubbish team. So, all right, let's go for the next one.
Team. Very successful team.
What percentage of my income should be allocated to living and lifestyle account, the primary account, and payments account?
All right, that was a question from, the speak pipe said Matt, but I think we can, would it be fair to say...
I'm not sure that's Matt.
That's one of Matt's network there. But it also says Nerida in the email, so let's assume that was Nerida. But a good question, Ben. So it's around money smarts and budget setting and allocating into... what particular category? And I don't know that there's an easy answer for that because we're all different. But I think having the ability to compare with others is probably the more important question, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's a fascinating question, and so this is where you want to peer review yourself against others. And we're going to be doing some work on this during the year, and so that's going to be really exciting in terms of what that work looks like. Because the reality is that we're going to be able to give some more in-depth science to that. So how I look at it is I sort of say bills and spending. If you're a couple, bills and spending, and you're on around the 150 to 180 mark, I would like to see the spending overall spending around 50 to 60. Like that's pretty reasonable. Anything below that...
Percent or 1,000?
Thousands. So because you've got to remember that's gross income, so we've got to take our tax out of that and we've got that left over. In terms of lifestyle, living and lifestyle for a couple, I like to see that number sort of sitting between the sort of 500 to 700 as a rough guide. If I'm a single, probably, you still got to, you normally have a bit of extra slippage or more that you have to do. Like you still got to turn the lights on in your own place if there's just one of you. So you're sort of probably more around the sort of 300 to 500. Now that depends on the income you've got coming in as well. I think the big trick for me here is really around the lending side. So making sure that the lending piece is not overstretched. So we would normally say, having your mortgage at around 35% of your gross household income, that's about where we'd want it to be. When we start seeing households having 40 to 50, and we've talked about this years ago on some earlier podcasts, that's when we're starting to stretch ourselves beyond what is acceptable. Now that just means that people are going to pull back on the levers on living and lifestyles and bills and spending. So I think that's the challenge here, is we know couples who spend and can live on $11,000 a year, and that's food and accommodation. And we just go, that's nuts.
Was it 11 or 17?
They can get down to as low as that if they go to absolute hardcore, but they can live on around 17 to 22 comfortably, and that's I can't do that.
No.
So the reality is but they're making choices. They don't run cars, they don't do all of those types of things.
And they retired in their 30s.
Yep, and that's the choices they made. So they reverse engineered it the other way, which was basically build up as much income producing assets and pay the debt off as quick as possible. And You don't need $100,000 passive income if you only live on 22. So it's all relative to sort of what you're looking at. So that's where it's challenging. But it's a really fascinating question, and I reckon we're going to come back and revisit that over the course of the next couple of years. And
is this a bit where we can sort of give a little?
Maybe we haven't talked about it.
No.
Well, look, there's maybe. Well, you go.
Mate, we got a new book.
We have a new book.
Well, it's not out yet.
No, we're writing a new book.
If anyone could see the matchsticks under our eyes, but it's we obviously talk about money smarts on this podcast, Ben, but we're going to do a deep dive, because we think that we talked the R word, the revolution, what was it?
It's a prequel.
Yeah.
It's a prequel to the Armchair Guide.
It is
basically.
a prequel.
It's a prequel book that just focuses in on personal financial and money management.
But what were you calling it? Not a revolution. What were you? Crusade.
Crusade.
Oh, yeah. We're on a crusade.
I'm on a total crusade in terms of helping people manage their money better, and that's good, because these are the times when interest rates are going to eventually rise, that household money management needs to be important, and so we're going to be really focusing in on really teaching people some of the ways in which they can manage their money in a good system. Obviously, Money Smarts is the foundation of that. But we're going to sort of go a little bit further into some of those other areas. So there you go. Question without notice, but you just heard it here first.
Well, we've got a wonderful community on the podcast, but not everyone's on our podcast community. No. So we think that we can help a lot of Australians manage their money better. But one little tip for Nerida too is in terms of the percentages there. That's not easy because everyone's different. It's like a fingerprint. But one of the things that we do is we like to pay our living and lifestyle amount just before the weekend. We do it on a Thursday. So that if you're going to burn most of your discretionary cash on the weekend, but if you get to Monday and you've had a big weekend, you then, instead of topping up on the groceries, you open the pantry and you see if you can make it stretch to Thursday again. So,
all right, you've convinced me to give away one of the little great things in the book.
All right.
So here's the way in which you do it before the book's out.
We've been burning long hours on this, mate.
Here we go. Right. To work it out, it's as simple as writing down your budget, so working through your list of things and having two columns, essential and discretionary. Because you can also go to the grocer and you can have discretionary items, which might be things like ice cream. In my case, it is ice cream, and it's dark chocolate with almonds. If anyone's listening, so they're the things that aren't necessarily, they're not going to keep me alive.
No,
right? They're not part of the 5 food groups. They're going to keep me alive and functioning and have a healthy body and a healthy outcome. So that's what you can potentially start to do. If you break them down, you will then know what is your essential and what is your discretionary. And it's that discretionary piece that's negotiable. Really, the essential stuff shouldn't be negotiable in terms of your story. But there's more about that in the book.
Exactly. So there you go, Nerida/Matt. Thank you for that question. And the answer is watch this space. We'll announce it on the podcast to give you an opportunity.
Gee, we gave that a real big build-up, didn't we? Should we not? Should we? Well, okay. There it was.
Well, it was and it was a bit unplanned. So, but watch this space. We'll give you a chance to peer review against everyone else, so you can get a better idea of that.
Thank you very much, Nerida. Good question.
All right, here's one from Stuart.
Hi, guys. I just wanted to get your opinion on whether you're focusing a little bit more on Tasmania. And the reason for that question was I was just on a work trip over in Tasmania literally last week. And there was a lot of commentary on the radio about shortage of supply of rental accommodation, even talk of people living in tents. I didn't really get fully across it, but something to do with legislation taking a long time to release land or planning approvals taking a long time. So bureaucracy, essentially. And I just wondered whether any of this shortage of supply had meant that your buyers advocates are maybe looking a little bit more closely at Tas. Certainly Hobart. I'm not sure whether somewhere like Launceston comes into that. But yeah, really interested on your take on what's going on in Tasmania at the moment. Especially perhaps people looking to make an investment entry sub 500,000 as places like Melbourne and Sydney make that a little bit harder to achieve. So, yeah, interested on your opinion. Thanks very much.
Very good question, Stuart. I suppose I should speak on behalf of our buyers advocates, Ben. We have we have run the ruler over Tasmania. The biggest challenge for us with Tasmania is: are you an active investor or are you a passive investor?
Yeah.
And so just in terms of who we are as a business and helping clients, we're passive investors, right?
Yep.
And it's been challenging because obviously Tasmania has received a fair bit of positive press of late. The prices have gone pretty well. There's a few of our competitors who are actually in that market, but we've made a decision on a couple of reasons not to pursue it for our clients. And one is the population growth is low and not looking like it's going to get significant growth going forward. Two, you've got to have a local who needs to rent it and get a job there as well, and the industry isn't, it's not a thriving metropolis down there. But also, we've got one of our buyers agents who's lived in Tasmania, owned a couple
An
of
estate agent down there. Yep.
Owned a couple of real estate agent offices for 20 years. Has a portfolio of property herself, and she said having her time over again, she wouldn't do that. Now.
Yep.
Again, if there's some Tasmania people listening, it's with full respect. But the idea here is that we need consistent growth for our portfolios. Now, it's not a linear line; it's more of an exponential line. But we need to have reasonable expectation of getting some growth each and every year or every second year in the portfolio. Whereas what we've observed in Tasmania is it does a big spike and then it sort of tracks sideways for some time, which isn't part of the modelling and it isn't part of what we're trying to do with our business. So if you're active in Tasmania, and interestingly, that was actually our Tasmanian buyer's agent
right there on the phone.
So I quickly pushed that to
your shout.
I'll call her back. But passive versus active. So if you want to go down there and be active, Ben,
yep,
and that's where you get a little spike,
yep,
and a bit of that's already happened. But if you have a little spike, then you go back to the bank and you revalue it so you can go somewhere else. Fine.
Yep.
It's just not part of our business modelling.
No.
So that's our view on Tasmania in terms of that lack of population growth. Which
So I'll take a deeper dive into that, Bryce, because it's really important stuff. Because the location score data, which is measuring demand and supply, has been screaming to us Tasmania for 15 months. And it's only getting worse as potentially it's been heated up by investors coming into that market as well, because the yields are good.
Yep.
Right? So we look at Hobart and we go, some lovely period homes, some amazing food, some amazing tourism stuff going down there, and we think, is that enough for us in terms of that? And the reality is, I also look around the city of Hobart and I see 10-storey buildings, 20-storey buildings that are holding big, huge populations of workers that are earning good income and they've got great growth. Is it a financial centre? No. Is it a tech centre? No. Is it a biotech centre? No. It's got none of that. Okay, what it has is tourism. And a lot
forestry and retail.
And the population that's going there is an ageing population whose income's actually decreasing as they get older. So it's got very good medical and will have a lot of the aged care stuff going through. But people who are rolling old people in their beds to avoid, bed sores aren't earning $120,000 a year. So what you're talking before about, if I was a super active investor and I wanted to make this my hobby and my job, then I would go to Hobart and I would have gone there 15 months ago. And hopefully I've probably seen my $250,000 property move to $320,000. Terrific percentage gain, all right? And I can release 80% of that equity that I've got. So that gives me, 30, 40 grand to go and put that into a bigger market? Not quite. So all of a sudden I'm then going to be sitting on that. Now the reality for Hobart is it has these enormous runs up. And Stuart, you're absolutely right. There is a shortage of the bureaucracy in the place is terrible. The land supply is terrible. Getting builders down there and being able to build this stuff. So there is a chronic shortage. And we've also heard about Airbnbs demanding whatever they want to down there because there is a shortage. So the yield story is good. The pressure's on the market, supply in the market, in action. Property prices are going to go higher. But guess what? They will catch up. They will release the land. There will be some apartment blocks that are built and some townhouses that are built. And then all of a sudden, it'll overshoot itself. And then it'll find its new equilibrium, its new balance. And it may be 20 or 30, 40% higher than what it was previously. And so if I'm an active investor, I potentially take my money, leave that property there,
go to the next run.
And go to the next one. But for the investors, as you're saying, Bryce, we look after them and we measure their investment activity for not 20, 30 foot, but indefinitely. And so if we're sort of said we need a 5%, 6%, 7% compounding return indefinitely, we are just simply not going to get that in that market. And we've got, evidence of a 20-year experienced agent from that marketplace. We've got Joel in our property wealth planning team, who's also lived and grew up in Tassie. So we know that it's a short-term gain, but it's like, okay, where do I go from there? So if you are, cash flow is important to you and you want to make this your hobby, where you're spending lots of weekends and doing all this, you can do it. You can absolutely do it. Our clients are time poor professionals. So in our sense, we're looking for those people usually with household incomes of 200 plus, and we're working through in terms of 4 or 5 boring properties and building $100,000 passive income, as opposed to having 12, of which then I've got to manage the tenants on, I've got to manage so that's that. But that's not to say, Stuart, you're absolutely right. If you wanted to be more hands-on, then Tassie could be a play.
Yeah, so active investors, go and check it out. Passive investors, just ask a few more questions, Ben.
Yep.
And if you go back to our infrastructure podcast, it's about the jobs infrastructure, Ben.
Yep.
Don't forget the fundamentals of someone has to go and apply for a loan.
Yeah.
The bank's going to ask how much do you earn. They're going to ask if you earn more than you did last year. If you don't earn more than you did last
Big
year,
money
your
in
borrowing
wine.
capacity isn't going to increase.
Big money in their cheese and chocolate down there. Big money in their aquaculture. Massive money in their aquaculture, but only shared by a few. So they're, the crow boats, the salmon fisheries, the tuna fisheries, the unbelievable amounts of money coming into a small few. So that's where the challenge is. Whereas we don't have, we've got, surgeons down there that we work for, and they're bringing their money and putting that money into the bigger cities because they understand that there's just not a big enough cluster of them. I mean, I'd love to own one of the period homes they're overlooking the Derwent or one of the beaches. Stunning, would be really, really nice. But the reality is, I'm not going to see that growth. You'll see it in a very small pocket, and that carries a little bit too much risk. That's why the entry-level cities that we go into for growth is Adelaide's the lowest we would go into.
And it'd be interesting to be a fly on the wall at AFL House, Ben. They've got people down there screaming for a team down there, and yet they are reluctant to pull the trigger.
Yeah.
So it's a demographic
The
story.
economy of scale, and they just don't have scale. So that's why we as a business, for our clients, haven't taken people there.
Very good. So there you go, David. Great question. Nerida/Matt, great question. And, of course, Stuart's question around Tasmania, which is terrific, Ben. So on the weekend, I was just tidying up my study. And I surprised you?
You tidying up, surprise? no, you're excessive compulsive.
I would say OCD. So what I did is I got the cords to come through, the little hole in the desk, and then it just slips through. So I'm thinking, where do you get one of those cable holders? So what I did is, I grabbed one of the kids' 8 dot long Lego piece.
Yep.
Right.
And
then I found a man, and I stuck it in that, and I put that over top of the hole, and then I put the cables through the hands in the little Lego man.
Wait a minute, how big's the cable we're talking?
We're talking about an Apple Max cable all your iPhone cables and
Have
stuff
you got
like
a photo of it?
Well,
we need to put that on the socials. That's hilarious.
I'll get a photo. So I thought there's some people in their study might need a little cable holder.
Yeah, it won't hold a 240 volt standard cord because the hands are too small.
No, I'm an Apple guy. Mate. It's a shout out to the Apple guys. But you would know yourself. I mean, how much Lego do you have in our house? It is.
It's everywhere in our house. It's absolutely everywhere.
So that's my little life hack for today, Ben. You?
Me?
Did you know?
Just some odd facts for today, mate.
Odd ones?
Yeah, some odd ones. Did you know that 8% of humans have an extra rib?
What?
8%.
No, I didn't.
Extra rib.
Yeah.
So, in your rib cage, Ibis. Yeah, Stig, yes. Some people, 8%, have a little extra rib. Mightn't be a fully grown, but obviously there's maybe a bit of something wrong in the DNA, maybe in the water they were drinking.
Wow.
Who knows? But
takes it back. It must be biblical times. I used to, the female was from the extra rib.
So they're the ones who don't believe in religion. They left the rib in.
There you go. So no, I didn't know that, mate.
That's my attempt at humour. It's pretty poor. All right. What's the
emphasis nodding?
Yes, it was very poor. Sorry about that. What's the most played board game in the world?
Monopoly.
There you go. So just for those people who don't know that, I think that.
Am I right?
Of course.
That's the first. Did you know I've been right the whole time? Even I was going to clap.
Well, there we go. That's a good example. So Monopoly. Played all around the world, biggest board game in the world. So that's just a little interesting fact for you. Maybe that's where people's interest in property comes from, and landlords holding money and charging rent. Who knows? Last one.
Interesting story. When I was playing Monopoly as a kid, my parents put their house on the market. We grew up in Perth. It was in a suburb that was probably 45, maybe even 50 k's out. So mum and dad put the property on the market, and then they put their price, and then they drove down to what they got, right? So I just thought that real estate always went down in value. So for the first few years with Monopoly, when everyone wanted to sell me their real estate, they'd be wanting to try and charge me more. I'm like, get stuffed. I'm not charging more. I've got to get. That's how it works in the real world. Imagine if I had grown up in Melbourne, auction suburb. I'll give you double. Don't worry. I'll give you 20% above the ask.
Can I buy that on lay-by?
So interesting perspective.
And just I know you're a bit of a food nut.
Oh, here we go. Do I need to sit down for this?
No, it's all good. It's all good. I like it. You like to eat healthy. But did you know that almonds are a member of the peach family?
I did, because if you open them up, it looks like it's the same as the peach nut.
Ah, there you go.
So, but mate,
so almonds are a member. of the
Don't
peach
try and say that's
so
all about
almonds.
Don't try and say that's all about me,
fruit.
Mr. Dark Chocolate and Almond.
Oh, I do like my almonds, hence I put it on there. That's all right. I get very upset when Jane's had a bit more than I've had, and I go to the fridge for my late night little almond hit before I start work again.
Yeah.
And where's the almond? Yeah. Okay. Well, there we go. So that's my little vice.
I don't know how you. I don't know. How
so there you go. Did you know? How'd we go for time? I was short and sweet this week.
Yes. No. We just want to give people we get some long form interviews. We just give them some short and sharp. But a couple of things.
Yes, please.
We haven't said this for a little while, Ben, but we get a lot of feedback where people say they actually started from episode 1.
Good.
And now we're close to 170 episodes, Ben. So it will certainly mean that if people want to start from first episode, there's a bit of catch up to do. So 1.5 speed.
Yes.
And definitely listen to the first 20. They're all foundational. So if you're hearing us for the first time, a friend's referred you, go back to the beginning and let us know. And just a shout out to people, Ben, who are leaving reviews on our website, on iTunes. They are terrific. They fuel us.
They do fuel us.
Absolutely fuel us that we're doing the right thing, and we're trying to make it easier for people to better manage their money and better make better decisions with the surplus that they trap, Ben.
Pretty much, that's it.
So if you're loving us, let us know, and tell a friend. We'd certainly love that. And of course, the last thing we haven't done for a little while, Ben, is Money Smarts. If you want to know how to... We gave you a little entree today. We're going to give you a long form explanation, give you some more stuff, but there's a short form that people can check out on the website, thepropertycouch.com.au, and they can download that on the homepage. They'll be mad not to. And then if they download that, Ben, we'll give them heaps of updates. We'll let them know in advance about Facebook Lives, all that sort of stuff. So it's a good community to be a part of.
Mate, and I'm going to give a plug for Location Score. Can we, in these show notes, put a link to the webinar?
Yes.
Because I think it's important. There's two parts to the webinar. The first part to the webinar is how you do it yourself.
Yeah.
Right? So, and if you are time poor, but you still want to do it yourself, then the best way to fast track yourself into picking good locations to buy in for capital growth, use Location Score. And for under $100, for 3 months, you're absolutely in the game, as opposed to sitting there for hours and hours and hours and trying to guess. This captures all that information, aggregates it, puts it through a really smart algorithm and gives you a score out of 100. Pretty simple stuff, and it'll point you in the right direction in terms of where to buy.
Use the advantage of big data, Ben.
It does use the advantage of big data. So watch the webinar first. You'll get a bit more of an in-depth understanding in terms of the technical pieces that we look at, and then basically how Location Score can do that for you with a little discount at the end there if you hang around.
And Ben, we love talking to all of our community, so if you want to reach out to us at The Property Couch, definitely on our Facebook page, go and like us there, you get all the updates. But for me, at Bryce Holdaway, and for you, at Ben Kingsley AU.
Yes.
Say good day, ping us, we'll say good day back to you. We'd love to have a chat, so... There we go. We covered a bit.
There we go. Love Q&A.
Love Q&A.
Bring them on.
Keep those speak pipes coming. If you do it on speak pipe, you
questions
go
without notice.
Straight
know the answers
to the top of the queue. So, mate, until next week.
Knowledge is empowering, but only if you act on it.
Very good. See you next week.